All right, everyone. I want to welcome you to our virtual tour for Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. My name is Mr. Hunsberger. I am the principal of Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this tour. Co-hosting this virtual tour with me is Miss Becky Cunningham. She's one of our amazing parent volunteers, and she'll be monitoring the chat room. So if you have questions as we go through this, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A, but we will move forward with sharing you more about our school. So again, thank you so much. And we are recording this session, and we will we'll make it available for families who weren't able to join us a little bit later on. So let's start. Katherine Johnson STEM Academy is the neighborhood middle school for the areas of Westchester, Playa Vista, and Playa del Rey. And we take our name very seriously as a STEM academy because we center ourselves around an integrated STEM curriculum, which continues in the idea of what has started at Playa Vista Elementary School and has developed in partnership with the local university, Loyola Marymount University. And so we exist because we wanted the great things happening at Playa Vista Elementary to continue at a secondary level at the middle school. And so that's why we exist, and that's why we became a brand new school 3 years ago. So in the fall of 2017, Katherine Johnson STEM Academy opened as new middle school pathway, and in the fall of 2018, we renamed ourselves Katherine Johnson STEM Academy, and we love this name. Some of you may have heard of Katherine Johnson before. Katherine Johnson was a NASA mathematician who worked for NASA back in the 50s and 60s and helped launch the American spaceflight program. Her story was largely unknown until about 5-6 years ago when a movie called Hidden Figures came out. And so when that film came out, her story, as well as the story of other famous African-American women who worked for NASA back in that time, became widely known. Part of the thing I like to highlight about our name is that when we became Katherine Johnson STEM Academy, it was a group of community members and students and teachers all coming together saying, we want the name of the school to reflect Miss Johnson for a couple reasons. One, because her success in STEM and her career pathway aligns with what we want our students to become. And then secondly, she overcame a lot of obstacles along the way. And in so doing, we want to inspire our students and let them know that STEM is for everyone. To continue this pathway forward, Katherine Johnson STEM Academy became one of only about a half dozen or so middle schools in the entire district of LA Unified who became STEM certified in the spring of 2019. That was a rigorous process that we went through. We had an accrediting team come through our classrooms and see whether our focus on STEM was really there, or was it just something that we were saying and adding as a part of our name. So we've been fortunate in being able to get and to maintain that accreditation at this time, and we'll be thrilled that next year there will be some more middle schools who will join us with that certification, but we're proud that Katherine Johnson was one of the first. One of the things I also want to mention is that Katherine Johnson has a deep partnership with Loyola Marymount University. Loyola Marymount University is the university just down the street from us in Westchester, and again, our existence is in large part due to the partnership between LMU and LA Unified. So as such, LMU has entered into what's called a Memorandum of Understanding, or an MOU, with our school that creates a special relationship. And what that means is that they provide tons of resources for us and our students and our families. And then on the flip side, we're able to help them with their School of Education program and providing a pipeline for their teacher education candidates into careers of teaching. And so as such, we've become a demonstration site for the LMU School of Education. And the idea is that teachers who teacher prospects who attend LMU as college students and want to become teachers can simply come over to Katherine Johnson STEM Academy, see the amazing teaching that's going on, student teach, observe teach, and learn best practices from us. And that's something that we've been able to do so far. We've had student teachers in our English classrooms, in our math classrooms. We've had a student counseling program where school counselors are joining us at the school. Additionally, we partner with them to develop innovative STEM curriculum. On the left of this slide, you see a gentleman by the name of Chris Rougier, who's a full-time employee of LMU, but he works 5 days a week at Katherine Johnson. And his simple job, and it's actually not simple, but it's simple to understand, is he helps teachers write great STEM curriculum for kids. So we're talking problem-based learning, we're talking hands-on projects. We'll go a little bit deeper on later on in the presentation, but he is with us full time. It's nice because he works for LMU, so he doesn't answer to the same folks. He is able to give us a really great perspective on what we can do to provide amazing STEM education for our kids. Additionally, LMU is on our teacher selection committee, and they're part of the process for every single staff member we bring on board. And that's so important to us because I know as a school principal, the most important thing that I ever do is hire a team of amazing teachers. And then finally, LMU does get to have some representation on our school site council so that all of the things that we do is a partnership and making sure that the vision of the school is aligned with where we want to go as a school, but where also LMU knows that best practices go for. So this is a very deep relationship, one that we are proud of, and one that has really formed the basis for our school to be in existence. In addition to our LMU partnership, we have a tremendous amount of support from community partners in the area. So SoCal Gas, Playa Vista Elementary School, the Councilman's Office, the Coastal Education Foundation, the Hometown News, the Neighborhood Council, Drollinger's. I mean, I could list all of these, but in the last 3 years since we've been a school, I've been blown away with how much community support there is, and this support ranges from these organizations providing field trips for our students to providing folks who come on campus and share their pathways to STEM with students, but also it means additional funding. So these organizations are all groups that have provided additional funding to the school, which means we can do more things with our students. We'll talk about our STEM lab a little bit later. Do things that students would not have the opportunity to do otherwise. Very specifically, I do want to highlight one partner, specifically Google. Google, everyone's heard of Google. It's the name of a company, but it's also a verb. You Google something when you want to know what it is. And about a year and a half ago, we learned that Katherine Johnson STEM Academy was going to be the recipient of a $50,000 grant from Google to develop a STEM lab here at our school. And I'm going to show you that on the next screen. So in addition to having that tremendous financial resource of the $50,000 grant, Google has also partnered with us in several different ways moving forward. So firstly, if you see on the top right of your screen, Google hosted a Diversity in STEM Day where they invited our students to actually come down to the campus of the new office in Playa Vista. Additionally, you can see some of the photos from that on the right and on the bottom. Later on in the spring, they actually invited several of our students to present their projects from Katherine Johnson at their Google I/O events. So if you see along the bottom left-hand corner, we have two of our students presenting a fuel cell car that they designed with their sixth grade math class last year, and they presented that at Google. And then finally, Google has partnered with us in that they sent the first of our STEM speakers to share with our students their story of coming from whatever background they came from to go work for Google. And so in the top left corner, you see a picture of our first STEM speaker, a gentleman by the name of Anthony Mays, who came and shared his story in a live assembly with our students. Later on in the year, he did a virtual Q&A online with our students. And so that partnership has been one that's tremendous and one that we're particularly proud of. We haven't run into any other schools that have such an amazing partnership with Google. like I mentioned a second ago, we have a STEM lab funded by Google, and it is a place where kids can get their hands on all kinds of stuff, but really it's not about the stuff, it's about the kinds of learning and the kinds of questions that kids learn to ask and answer in that lab. So right in the middle, you'll see one of our sixth grade math teachers, Mr. Ram, running a project where kids are designing water filtration systems. And so they're able to do that in the STEM lab. We probably couldn't do that in the classroom where he's at normally, but this space allows us to do that. And then along the left side and along the right side, you see some of the other activities that students do in the STEM lab, such as build robots. They designed video games. Additionally, they participated in a robotics tournament, and finally also had an opportunity to, well, I went forward a little bit, to go and, I can't go back. There we go. To hear about electric motorcycles in the STEM lab. We had some guests from them. So we were very excited about our STEM lab. In addition to that, we have what's called our STEM Speaker Series. And this is something that we started this year, and we invite real life people who work in STEM fields such as Google, X Prize, Northrop Grumman, PlayStation, Relativity, to come to our school and actually give an assembly of sharing with our students their own unique journey to a career field in STEM. So we were very proud and excited to have these real life folks who are in the STEM fields to share with our students their unique pathway there. We know that when kids are in school, they hear STEM, STEM, STEM from us as teachers, as principals all the time, but it takes it to a whole new level when someone who's actually got a STEM job comes and shares that with the students. So a little bit back into what our main focus is as a school. On our first slide of this presentation, if you were able to see it, you saw our vision, which is solving 21st century problems with great hearts and great minds. And that really is our vision at the school, because we know our kids will become the problem solvers of the 21st century, and they already are. So we really take that mindset, and for the most of the rest of the presentation, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what that actually looks like in terms of great hearts and great minds. So we're going to actually do it in reverse order, starting with great minds. So how do we focus on developing kids with great minds at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy? Well, first, quite simply, we focused on STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so what does that actually mean? Number one, it means that when they're at Katherine Johnson, students take a STEM elective every single year. So what that means is every single year, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, they have a particular STEM-based elective class that provides a unique pathway as they go through their middle school experience. In 6th grade, every student takes foundational coding, so they learn how to computer code. And then as a 7th grader, the student will take a robotics class. So you can actually see the photo on the right. This is our some of the members of our 7th grade class at a robotics tournament. And then in 8th grade, they take physical computing, which is essentially an engineering class where they ask the big questions around what does the coding have to do with actual physical elements of design. In addition to being a school where kids take a STEM pathway, we are a one-to-one Chromebook school. It's interesting now because we've gone in this online digital learning space with the pandemic. The district has tried to make every school a one-to-one school, but lucky for us, we've been a one-to-one school for the last 2 years. And so making the transition from in-person to online has not been very challenging at all, because our kids are used to using Chromebooks that they're issued. Our teachers are used to using Chromebooks that they're issued. And it's been a simpler transition than a lot of schools who have not had a chance to use technology. So all of our students are issued a Chromebook. They keep it for their 3 years. At the end of their 8th grade year, they return it to the school, and allows kids to really access learning in new ways than they had ever before. One of the things that we're excited about is that while we do miss our students and we do long for the day when schools eventually reopen, We know that during this time, we're learning some great lessons, and our students and our teachers are taking their skills even further. One of the things that I'm going to share in my coffee with the principal that I do with our current families tomorrow, you guys lucky, you get a little head start on this. The district is rolling out 30 hours of training for teachers who want to like take it to the next level in terms of instruction online, called Future Ready Schools. All 8 of our teachers have signed up for that training. So we're super thrilled that they've been doing it and they're leading the way moving forward. Additionally, at Katherine Johnson, we have a GATE line, or otherwise known as an honors line. For those of you who are not familiar with LAUSD, GATE stands for Gifted and Talented Education. It's essentially a label in our data system that puts kids who have demonstrated high levels of proficiency in academic achievement in honors classes so that they can take accelerated math, accelerated English. They can be grouped with other high-performing students in the rest of their classes. We are thrilled that we have that line for kids at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. If families have questions about how they get their kid labeled as GATE, my email will be at the end of this. I can go deeper and dive with you in terms of that. Additionally, we have a full-time resource specialist teacher and several assistants. So kids who have special needs, students with IEPs, individual education programs, we are able to provide services for them. We have push-in and pull-out services at the school that we can provide for our students with IEPs as well. And so one of the things that we're thrilled about is not just the high level of academic achievement that we provide and expect from all of our students, but we do so with a large variety of students as an incredibly diverse school. So again, I'm certainly willing to go more in depth on those last 2 points, and my email will be shared at the end of this. All right. Problem-based thematic instruction. So what does STEM look like in our classrooms? I will briefly go over this. Again, if any of you who are watching are teachers or educators, you and I could probably wonk out on these next 2 slides for about an hour, but I will try to keep this brief. Basically, our approach is to have students really focus on questions and questioning, meaning identifying what are problems in the world, problems in the area, problems in the community, identifying what those questions are, and then providing and solving and coming up with solutions for them, and trying different things and seeing what fails and trying it again. So the themes that we've developed that each student asks in all of their courses are as follows. In 6th grade, there's the question, how does where you live impact how you live? In 7th grade, how are communities created and sustained? In 8th grade, how can you take action to improve society? So those are all 3 questions that we center our learning around in each of the 3 grade levels. To get really wonky, for those, like I said, for those of you who are educators, we've broken those themes down into 4 quarters throughout the year. We've aligned those themes with some of the next generation science standards. That's what you see with those letters like MSPS 1-1. But this is our academic pathway, and we seek to make connections between all of the academic courses and these themes. And so if you have any questions about that, we can talk about it at the end, or you can, reach out to me by email and we can go really deep on that. So we focus on great minds, but we also focus on great hearts. At this point in the presentation, when I give this presentation in a room where we're actually physically sitting together, I will ask the question. I'll ask the following question. I'll say, all right, families, how many of you have had middle school students before? And a couple of families will raise their hand, but most of them won't. Most families who come on our tours are about to have their first middle school age student for the first time. Here's the bad news. Everything you've heard about raising a middle school age child is true. The good news is that you're not alone in that. and it's all completely normal. So that is what's happening as your child enters Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. The good news is that we are a community and we're all committed to helping them together. But something interesting developmentally happens to middle school age students. First of all, middle school age students want to and are experiencing the reality that they are, for the first time ever in their lives, noticing that they're not their parents. They are someone else. They have their own interests. They have their own things they're excited about. And so they're starting to take moves of independence. 100% normal. While that's happening, they also want to be just like everybody else. So those two conflicting ideas can create a roller coaster of emotions that happen in kids' lives. And so that is something that we acknowledge, and that's something that we actually spend a good deal of time on at our school. So I want to talk to you briefly about how we actually take time to address the social and emotional needs of kids at our school. So I'm going to talk about two things. One of them is about growth mindset, and then the other one is about regulating all of these emotions that kids are feeling during these times. So first, growth mindset. Many people have heard of growth mindset. Some people haven't. What growth mindset is it's the reality that when kids or adults have a mindset that failure is something that you can overcome, or feedback is constructive, or challenges are things to go towards, it will actually lead to better outcomes than if they have the opposite, which is a fixed mindset, meaning people or kids feeling like they're defined by their failures. They experience a challenge or an obstacle or a failure, and then they tell themselves, oh, I must not be a math person, or, oh, I'm no good at that. And the reality is, if we want our generation to be the kind of kids who grow up to be adults who run towards challenges and run towards things that truly matter, those things are not going to be easy. And we want kids who are brave enough and who are willing to be the first people to try to solve problems, and you have to be willing to fail in order to do that. And so we try to instill that growth mindset in our students. If you want to do a little digging, the book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, who's out of the University of Stanford, is a really good way to start on that. But there's a really simple way to start, and that's simply adding the word yet. So, regardless of what you do at the end of this presentation, one of the things I'd encourage you to start doing is, if you hear limiting statements or limiting beliefs from children, adults, simply reframing it with the word yet at the end is particularly powerful towards developing that growth mindset. So that's something that I would encourage everyone to do, to look at. And it's not just, warm, fuzzy. The science and the research actually backs this up. And so that's something that I wanted to make sure that all of our folks are aware of and can share in and can know. Here are a couple examples of this that I like to share. Starting on the right, those are photographs taken from, actually all three photographs come from our 7th and 8th grade math teacher, who is basically, our resident expert on growth mindset. So she has used the acronym for math, mistakes allow thinking to happen, and all those Post-its are actually examples of students' errors that she highlights and encourages them to categorize them based on what kind of error they were and what they can do to grow that mistake. Again, on the right is a student who is going through a particular error and doing some error analysis. I love the picture on the left. If any of you are math geeks out there, I was a former math teacher. I was a former math major. It looks like, this student is just having fun with some Legos. But if you can see in that, in what she's built there, that is actually a proof of the Pythagorean theorem using Legos. So you can see that triangle in the middle, in the empty space in the middle, there's a right triangle there. And then there are 3 squares, and the area of the two squares that are filled in, the 2 smaller squares, actually add up to the area of the big square. And because those are the lengths of the sides, that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If any of you remember your middle school algebra course in the Pythagorean theorem. So that's just a couple examples of what that looks like in the classroom. The second thing I want to share with you is how we help our young folks, our young students, deal with the flood of emotions that they feel quite normally in their middle school years. And so as an approach, we've adopted something called the ruler approach, which comes out of research out of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. I would actually encourage all of our families and all of you on this call to check out the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. They're actually, in addition to supporting schools for the last number of years, they've been doing it. During this time of school closures, they're actually doing lots of webinars. They did one this morning for family members as to how they could use some of these tools with their families in this time. But the reality is that not only is there science around growth mindset, there's science around how emotions impact learning. And the reality is that among all people, but especially kids, the emotion rules rather than the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, which is the logical, the planned, the cognitive. And so if we don't pay enough attention to what's going on emotionally, we won't be able to achieve academically or to develop the kind of teams that we want to moving forward. As a former math teacher, I experience this all the time. You have that class after lunch in the afternoon, and the students come in, and you're supposed to teach them how to graph a parabola, but two of your students are just in this really weird, angry mood, and right now, unless you figure out something that's going on, you're not going to be able to help these students learn that academic piece for that day. And so what we do is we focus explicitly on recognizing emotions, understanding emotions, labeling emotions, expressing emotions, and regulating emotions. And so on the next slide, I'm going to share with you 4 basic tools that help our students do that and how we use them. We're going to do a little bit deep dive on 2 of them, and then we'll move on from there. So the 4 anchor tools that we use with our ruler approach are something called the charter, the mood meter, the meta moment, and the blueprint. So the charter is basically an agreement that the students and the classes make together about how they want to feel at school. And what gives them power in that is by identifying what they want to feel, they're able to determine what actions they're going to take that help them feel that way. We're going to come back to the mood meter in just a second, but the meta moment is a strategy and a skill that we teach kids to help them pause in a moment so as not to be overwhelmed by a particular emotion, but to pause, acknowledge, to sense what they're feeling, to plan what their strategy is going to be, and to use that. And then lastly, and we'll go deeply into this a little bit in a moment, is something called the blueprint, which is a tool that we use to help kids manage conflict. And if you're a parent of a kid, or if you're a parent of 2 kids, that kids will have conflict, and conflict is normal, and we expect kids to have conflict, but we want to give them the skills to handle that conflict. So real quickly, I'm going to go deep into the mood meter and then deep into the blueprints and share with you what that actually looks like. So the research has said around emotions that not only is an emotion kind of the seat of what we do, but so many of us, not only adults, but especially kids, don't necessarily know, or we have trouble identifying what emotions we're actually feeling at a particular time. And without knowing the emotion or having a word for that emotion, it will prevent us from having a strategy to help deal with that emotion. What this looks like is for example, if if it's the end of a day, it's the end of a Thursday, and you pick your kid up from school, and they get in the car, and you say, "How are you feeling?" And you look at them, and they've got a scowl on their face, and they've got their brow furrowed, and they say, what do they say? "What are you feeling?" "Fine." They'll say that. Part of that is they don't know how to respond. It's challenging to identify the feeling that they're responding. So what the mood meter does is it gives kids and adults a vocabulary to communicate more accurately about what they're feeling. And as a result of this, it gives them strategies to be successful when they feel those emotions. So I love this because, you know, from my personal background, my personal story is, you know, I grew up in a family, and my dad was a math professor in a college, and my mom was a pharmacist. So they were both very geeky people, and we didn't talk about feelings and we didn't talk about emotions. And, you know, that was just our family growing up. And one of the outcomes of that is that I never developed a robust vocabulary to describe emotions. And so my natural proclivity right now is when someone asks me how I'm feeling, I'll say, "Oh, I don't know," or good, bad, happy, sad, and that's about it. But without a tool to help me understand a more nuanced emotion, I won't be able to effectively strategize. And this is something we want to give our kids and our families. So how do we use the Mood Meter app? And this is something that you can actually use right now, and we'll do an example of this together. So before I go back into that slide, let me just take a look at this. What the Mood Meter is, it is essentially a grid. It is a 10 by 10 grid with dots on each point, 10 dots to the left and right, 10 dots up and down. So there are 100 different dots, and each dot represents an emotional word, a specific emotional word. And in 2 slides, I'm going to share with you what those emotional words are. But the way that this is organized is, as in any algebra class or pre-algebra class, you can find a point on a 10 by 10 grid by simply asking 2 questions. And so these are the 2 questions that we ask ourselves and we ask our students when they're struggling to identify an emotion. So the first question we ask students and we ask ourselves is this: how pleasant are you feeling? And the answer is going to be a number, some number between -5 and +5. So in terms of pleasantness, a feeling of a +1 would be a slightly pleasant feeling. Oh, that was a good cup of coffee I just had. I'm feeling slightly pleasant. A -1 might be slightly unpleasant, like, ooh, I just stubbed my toe. A +5 in terms of pleasantness would be something truly fantastic. Like, I just got $50,000 from Google for a STEM lab. That's awesome. A -5 would be something truly tragic, the loss of a loved one in your life. One important thing to note is that none of these numbers are good or bad. It's just a measurement of how you're feeling in a particular moment. Likewise, we ask kids a second question: how energetic are you feeling in this particular moment? A +1 means you're slightly energetic, you've got some energy. A -1 is, you know, slightly tired. A +5 means you've got energy, you know, bouncing around the room, all of this stuff. You're like a kid on Christmas Eve and you've just drank 10 Red Bulls, so you're jumping all around all over the place. A -5 would be you're more tired now than you've ever been in your life before. And like I said, most of the time, people don't live at the extremes, but somewhere in between of those. And so as a result of this, what we can do is, by asking ourselves or asking our students these 2 questions, we can identify how we're feeling with a particular word. So say, for example, and I'm going to use one of the annotation functions of this, if I am feeling, in terms of pleasantness, I'm feeling a 3. So I'm kind of in the middle in terms of pleasant. In terms of energy, right now, I might be feeling a +4. And so you can probably hear it in my voice. I've got lots of energy right now. So a +3 for pleasantness and a +4 for energy. So again, our number for number 3 is going to be our number along the x-axis, which is our left and right. So this is the pleasantness. So I'm going to go 3 over here. And then our number for energetic is our number along the y-axis. You remember that from algebra? That was a 4. So I'm going to go up here, 4. And where those 2 lines meet is going to give me a specific point. And on the next page, I'm actually going to reveal the entire mood meter. And that point is going to give me a word. And one of 2 things is going to happen when I see that word for how I'm feeling. One thing that's a possibility is I might say, oh my goodness, that's exactly how I feel. Wow. Another possibility is that you look at that word and you think, well, not quite. And if that's the case, I would look around that word to see if there's one that's better. So what I would actually ask you to do right now is, I don't know how your day has been so far. I don't know what you've experienced so far today or this week, but I want you to right now on your own answer those two questions. How pleasant are you feeling? -5 to +5. How energetic are you feeling? -5 to +5. And go ahead and on this little grid right here, find the point where that would be. And then I'll give you about 15 seconds to do that. And then on the next slide, I'll reveal what those words are and how that can help us and how that can help our students be successful. So take a moment, find the point for you. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide and reveal the entire mood meter. And we do that. Oh, I've got to unannotate those. We'll clear those. And here's the entire mood meter. So let's find out what I was. I was 3 in terms of pleasantness and 4 in terms of energy. So the word for me is motivated. I would say, you know what? That's actually a pretty accurate word for the word that I'm feeling right now. And there are some words that are close to that: optimistic, inspired, cheerful, festive. So right now, I've used a very simple way to identify a feeling that I'm experiencing right now. And that feeling is going to unlock for me strategies that I can use to access learning, to access friendships, to access those things that I need to access in order to be successful as a middle school student. And so this is a tool that we use very frequently. We actually have a way for kids to do this online, so that as a group of students comes in after lunch, after class, and the teacher can real quickly have everyone log on their Chromebook, identify their feeling, and we get an anonymous grid up on the screen where all of a sudden, if you're the teacher and you're noticing that, oh my goodness, 75% of the class feels something in this red zone, as a teacher, you can know, oh my goodness, I've got to adjust somehow, and I've got to somehow plan around this so that we can access a good strategy to learn today. One of the other things that I can do with this mood meter is I can actually normalize emotions in middle school age kids. We do our kids a disservice when kids experience unpleasant emotions, when we actually make them feel bad for feeling those things. And so a kid will often be feeling discouraged or disheartened or irritated or frustrated. And then we will oftentimes unintentionally allow that kid to feel bad for feeling those things. And the whole point of Ruler is that we want to normalize those feelings as a normal part of everyone's everyday experience. And so we want to tell kids, look, there are times when you feel frustrated. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel disheartened. It's okay to feel exhausted or restless. The question is not whether those feelings are good or bad. The question is, what strategy are we going to use to express those feelings? And so it's important to know as well as, although we acknowledge, unpleasant feelings, that is not a license to behave any way we want. No, it's okay to feel tense. It's not okay to express feeling tense by calling someone a name. It's okay to feel desolate. It's not okay to feel desolate and then to push someone. We're separating emotions from behavior. But unless we first understand the emotion and acknowledge its reality, we won't have a strategy for moving forward. I would encourage everyone to go online, look up Ruler Mood Meter, and this is a tool that you can use today with your families of how are you feeling and getting more specific about that. All right, so the next tool that I'm going to go a little bit deeper on is something called the blueprint, which actually helps our students develop empathy. We talked about all of the emotions that kids experience as middle school age kids. Another reality is this, and if you've had middle school aged kids before, you'll know this as well. Middle school kids often think that they are the center of the universe and everything revolves around them. That is a normal thing for middle school kids to experience. But the reality is that we need to train them and to help them learn how to empathize with others and put themselves in the shoes of other people. If we're truly going to solve problems in the world, and our students are going to be the ones who do that, they've got to learn how to develop empathy. The bad news is that it doesn't come naturally. The good news is that it's a very learnable skill, much like free throws or fractions. Is empathy. And so the blueprint is actually a tool that we use at the school, and you can use it in your families to help deal with conflict. And so I usually give this example with a specific example. I'll do it with fake names of students to protect their privacy. But the blueprint is essentially a protocol, a way to facilitate a discussion between two students. And so I'll tell a story. One day, it was the first year of our school, and I was supervising during lunchtime, and I walked around the corner, and I saw two of our sixth graders yelling at each other. And I didn't see the beginning of it, but I did see them yelling at each other, and they both looked really, really angry. And so I brought them into my office, and we used something called the blueprint. Oftentimes, we fall into the trap of asking first what happened. And what kids will often do when we start with that question is they will dig in their heels and they will defend their own position, and all of a sudden you the adult have turned into the judge, jury, and the executioner, and you're going to get two different stories about what happened, or three different stories sometimes about what happened. So what we do with the blueprint is we start a little bit differently. We start with that question on there for recognize and label. We ask the students not what happened, but how did you feel? Part of the reason we start with that question is because no one can dispute that. If you have two people in a conflict and you start talking about what happened or didn't happen, you're going to have all kinds of arguments about what actually happened or didn't happen. But if you start with the question, how did you feel? No one can argue with that, because how you felt was how you felt. And then we go a little bit deeper in terms of what caused the feelings, and then how did you express those feelings? And then what can we do to solve this problem? So here's how this plays out, in this example. So two kids, I'm going to call them Adam and Bob. That's not their names, but I'm going to call them Adam and Bob. I walk around the corner, they're yelling at each other. So I bring in my office, and they both sit down and humph and grumble and cross their arms and face the other way because they're still really, really upset. And so they're both sitting there with me. And so I'll start with Adam, and I'll say, Adam, how did you feel? And he'll say, I felt furious. And I'll say to Adam, okay, Adam, you felt furious. What caused your feelings? And he'll say, well, Bob called me a loser. And then I'll say to Adam, Adam, okay, Bob called you a loser. How did you express and regulate feeling furious? And then he'll say, well, I called his grandmother a loser. I'll say, okay. And then what I'll do is I will turn to Bob, who's been sitting there listening to this, and rather than having him take his turn next, which he will eventually, I will ask him to reflect on Adam's responses. So I'll say to Bob, Bob, how did Adam feel? And Bob says, Adam felt furious. Pause, time out. So two very important things happened in that moment when Bob says out loud that Adam felt furious. Number one, Bob is actually practicing empathy. By saying out loud, Adam felt furious, he is actually practicing saying an emotion that a different person besides himself is feeling. Regardless of what he is feeling, he's actually stepping into Adam's shoes and practicing saying an emotion that someone else is feeling. Even if Bob is still angry, which he might be, by practicing it, it actually helps him develop that skill so that he can prevent future conflicts. So that's number one thing that's happening. The second thing that's happening is a little bit deeper is this. When Adam hears Bob say out loud that Adam was feeling furious, all of a sudden, Adam starts calming down. And the reason for that is his amygdala, which is a piece of his brain, which has been going wild, which is the fight or flight muscle. As soon as he hears his enemy say out loud the thing that he was feeling, all of a sudden that amygdala starts calming down. And even if he wanted to still feel intensely angry, he actually could not do that. It's the thing that actually will start calming him down immediately. And if you think about it, that makes sense. That's what actually connects human beings to each other. It is oftentimes, agreeing about the same things, liking the same activities, but what really connects humans together is when someone else gets you, is when someone else feels what you're feeling. It's that level of empathy that drives people together. And so it's hard to continue to have a conflict with someone when they acknowledge or say out loud what you are feeling. And so I won't go through the whole protocol, but it allows both kids to explore and to practice empathy for the other person. And then finally, they plan a solution together by both saying what they could have done to handle the situation better and then what they can do now. Sometimes it may involve a school consequence if a school rule was broken. The nice thing about this protocol is that even if it does result in a school consequence at the end of this, both people fully understand that consequence when we get to there rather than pushing back against that. So again, this is a tool that we use in terms of developing empathy. And so we've spent a lot of time on social emotional learning for our students. And the reason we do that is because we think that is one of the very unique approaches that we take at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. That's something that's, when we've talked to parents who've done tours at multiple schools in the area, the one of the pieces of feedback we get is, oh my goodness, the depth that you go to on social emotional learning for your students is something that I haven't heard anywhere else. And so that's why we take so much time on that. All right, transitioning a little bit, and I'll go a little bit faster as we move towards the end, is a couple things. So we are a uniform school. Students are expected to wear uniforms every day. It is not a specific brand or vendor that we ask you to use. There's more information on our website about that. We do ask students to purchase a PE uniform, and students will change each day for PE. So we are a uniform school, and we've got a lot of feedback from families that it keeps it very simple, less arguing about what that looks like moving forward. Getting kids into the right clothes in the morning is real easy. Uniform. We have something called a block schedule. Some folks are familiar with this, some folks are not. What this is, it is a way to distribute the classes across the week in a way that helps them learn. So many of us grew up at schools where, if we took 7 classes, we took all 7 classes every day, 5 days a week. That's crazy. Because number one, that's 35 brand new pieces of learning of instruction every week. Number 2, you'll lose a lot of time in transition. Number 3, if you have homework period 6, guess when it's due? Tomorrow. And then homework period 6 again, guess when it's due? Tomorrow. That's exhausting. And so a lot of schools, including us, do something called block schedule, where, from a 10,000 foot view, basically we take the classes and we make them twice as long and meet half as often. And so what that allows our teachers to do is to deliver most of their instruction in 96-minute blocks, which is long enough to do a science lab. It's long enough to do an exploration in a math class and get feedback on work. It's long enough for a student to go down to the PE locker rooms to change, to do a couple laps, to do a cool down, to change back, to put on deodorant so they smell good, and then make it back to class on time. So we have found this really, really helpful for our young learners. For next year, we may be doing a couple of small little tweaks to this, but we're looking for ways to enhance this even more. But the block schedule is something that has benefited our learners and will continue to do so. This is an example of what that might look like. So you might have math on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so, for example, if you've got math homework that's assigned on Monday, good news, it's not due till Wednesday. So you've got a day or so. If you get stuck on it, you can go get help, or you can reach out to the teacher in many different ways. One of the things I also in person will ask some of our kids if they're joining us to notice about this slide is I ask this question about what else did you notice about this slide? And the first thing that kids say when they see this slide is they say, oh my goodness, school doesn't start until 8:45 a.m. And that is absolutely true. So we start not until 8:45 a.m. And there's a reason for that. We're not lazy, no, but we actually found and followed the research when we opened the school, which said that for adolescents and for pre-adolescents, having a delayed start actually helps them succeed even more. And so we looked at the research, and when we opened in 2017, we said, all right, we're going to start at 8:45. And we've had so much good feedback from parents. It's less of a hassle to get the kids out the door in the morning. More time, less stress. Everybody seems to really, really love it. Not just us, but other school districts across the nation are doing this as well. Seattle has done it. Boston has done it. And just recently, California became the first state as a whole state to make school time start later. And so this may have gone under the radar because although this was signed into law back last October, it goes into effect in the fall of 2022. So in 2 years, every secondary school in California will have delayed start times. So we just pride ourselves in being one of the first ones to do that. All right, so we do have a robust offering of before and after school programs for our students. We do have a handful of families who, although we encourage everyone to come at 8:15 when we open the gates. We have a handful of families who are, for example, teachers at other schools who have to drop their kids off early, and so we provide supervised study hall in the Westchester High School library from 7:30 to 8:15, which is right on campus. We also have an after-school program where kids can participate in flag football, basketball, soccer. We have LMU tutors, which are free and available. They're after school. We also have some success coaching with students after school for one-on-one coaching and goal setting. We have a weekly eco club that meets during lunch. We have a choir that has done some of their first performances, and we have a running club after school. And the clubs and the opportunities vary from year to year. All of the items on the list to the left are free of charge for all students. They are provided by LAUSD and or LMU. There are two other activities that we have for our students through a sports organization called FIA. We have a FIA basketball team and a FIA cheerleading team. These teams are not free to participate in. There is a fee associated with participating in them. However, if there's a family who really wants to participate and simply cannot afford it, we'll have a conversation and we'll figure out a way that kid can participate. We don't want money to be the thing that prevents a kid from participating. We are excited because this was our first year in FIA, and our basketball team won their division. We lost in the playoffs to Culver City, so we'll get them next year. But we're excited to offer these opportunities to students. The other thing I'll say about this, and I forgot to mention this in the last tour, is that because we're small, it's actually easy to start stuff. So when a parent has an idea, or a student has an idea, or a teacher has an idea, it's really just a question of saying, all right, are there enough kids who want to do it, and is there an adult to lead it? And if the answer to both of those questions are yes, then it's real easy to actually make that happen. All right, at this point, I am going to ask our co-host, Ms. Becky Cunningham, to unmute herself and share a few things about this particular slide, because she does such a good job with the parent organizations at the school. Go ahead.
Hi, so yes, we're the parent organization. We have a fundamental belief that Mr. Hunsberger does not have enough money to run the school the way we want him to run the school.
I agree with that.
So our job is to augment that in any way we can. We do a direct ask. We don't beat people up. We have families who are very easy and capable of just writing a check, and families where that isn't an option. We also do sales. Popcorn seems to be something that our middle school kids love to sell, so we do that. And then we're also doing volunteerism. So anytime we need chaperones, things we've been able to put on in collaboration with the school, of course, our typical book fairs, movie nights, STEM night at the movies, cleanup days, just anything. We also sell the swag spiritware, which we're hoping to expand this year. For those of you coming from schools where you have a fee that you must pay in order to be part of your parent organization, please know that if you have a child here at Katherine Johnson, you automatically are a voting member. So you don't need to pay any kind of fee. Any funds that we receive in, we want to directly have go to the school and go to the needs of the students. So if you have any questions, our parent emails at the end of this slide, and we'll happily take questions.
Cool. Thanks, Becky. All right. So a little bit on the logistics. Katherine Johnson STEM Academy is located on the campus of Westchester Enriched Sciences Magnets. Sometimes it's called WESM. Sometimes it's called Westchester High School. And I think if I can, let's see, there we go. So Westchester High School is in Westchester. It's at 7400 Manchester Boulevard, and it's huge. It was built for 3,000 students back in, I think, the 50s is when it was built. Today, there are not 3,000 students who go to Westchester High School. And so because of the available space, the campus is actually a host to 5 different schools. There's Westchester High School, there is Ocean Charter, there is Wish Middle School, Wish High School, and there's Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. Now, I'm a little bit biased, but I believe that Katherine Johnson STEM Academy has the best location on this property for a couple reasons. Number one, we're small, but that's actually deceptive from looking at this picture, because it's actually a pretty big space, and it gives plenty of room for our kids to run around during lunchtime, to play basketball, to have plenty of room in their classes. We also have our own mailing address, our own entrance, our own exit on Park Hill Drive. So along the right side of this road is where that is. And because our students are LA Unified students, although we are very and completely separated from the rest of the schools on the campus, we have access to all the facilities that all schools do. So our kids have access to the auditorium. We do our assemblies there. Our kids have access to the library. They go there for some assemblies, but also they do their morning drop-off there. They have access to the football field, to the baseball field, to the basketball courts, to the cafeteria area. We have access to something called the social hall, which is a multi-purpose room where we do dances and award ceremonies and things like that. So it is really a wonderful shared space. The principals of each of the 5 schools, including myself, we meet in person when we were still open, we met in person every 2 weeks to look at our calendars, to schedule some things, make sure we're not in the same place at the same time, and to even work on collaborating on some things. So one of the questions I get from parents when I show them this slide is, do KJ STEM kids end up interacting with high schoolers who are on the campus? And my answer is not enough. Really, during the day, they don't really see them. There's one high school classroom that's kind of nearby, so they may see them from time to time, but really there's no interaction. So we're actually trying to find ways to change that. So we've actually started doing joint assemblies together. We had Black History Month assembly a couple years ago, and then right before the schools closed, we were actually planning an eco awareness day that was led by the 5 eco clubs that were happening at each of the schools. So unfortunately, we weren't able to make that happen because school closed prior to anybody thinking that we would do that. But again, the 4 other principals at the other schools are tremendous collaborators, and we're looking for ways to really share some of our ideas and share some of our resources with each other. How do you get into Katherine Johnson STEM Academy? We're almost at the end. We've got this slide, one more slide, and then the end. Katherine Johnson STEM Academy is the neighborhood school. Sometimes it's called the assigned residence school for Westchester. Playa del Rey, and Playa Vista. We are not a charter school. We are not a magnet school. So you do not need to do e-choices, and there's no charter application because we're not a charter school. We're the district school. So what this means is that our primary responsibility is to serve residents of the neighborhoods of Westchester, Playa del Rey, and Playa Vista. So what that means is if you live in one of those three communities, you can simply fill out an application and send it in. And we're still trying to, in this online world right now, we're still trying to figure out how to verify some of the things that families typically have to verify in person, like a driver's license, things like that. More info to come on that. But once you fill out your enrollment forms, you've got a seat. You're in. It doesn't matter whether you're the first person or the 50th person or the 100th person. If you live in one of those three communities, you're in. Each year, if I have more seats available than folks from those three communities, I can take additional students. The last 3 years, I've had room. I anticipate having room for the next couple of years, but not indefinitely. As we continue to grow, I fully expect to run out of room for non-resident families, but here is how to apply for next year if you don't live in one of those three areas. So if you don't live in one of those three areas, you fall into one of two groups. One is you might be an intra-district resident, and that is if you, again, don't live within our boundaries, but you do live within an LAUSD boundary. So maybe you're within the Marina Del Rey Middle School boundary, or maybe you're within the Mark Twain Middle School boundary, or maybe you're within, what else? Maybe you're within Palms boundary, or maybe you're within, the Johnny Cochran boundary, or maybe you live way up in the valley, but you really like our STEM program, so you want to come down here. Absolutely. So if you live within an LAUSD boundary, you can come in as an intra-district permit. There's one extra piece of paper that you need, and you can download that from our enrollment page on our website. I do have to take those families in the order that I get their applications. So if that's you and you're interested, go ahead and download the application, email it into our school. And then third, if I still have room after that, I can take what are called inter-district residents, which are folks who don't live within LA Unified's boundaries. So folks who may live in Culver City or Hawthorne or Inglewood or El Segundo or Santa Monica or Long Beach or places that are not served by LA Unified. And so in order to do that, there's an extra step as well. You have to fill in, you have to apply online, and the link is on our website, to LAUSD. And they'll let you in, but then you also have to talk to your resident district, whether that's Hawthorne or Inglewood or Long Beach or wherever it is, and they have to release you. But if you call us up at the school, my office manager can assist you with that. For next year, we're anticipating 2 sections of students for each grade level. So 2 sections of 6th graders, 2 sections of 7th graders, 2 sections of 8th graders. Again, space is limited, so we're going to wait list folks if we need to, and if we run out of space. So I know that right now everyone's trying to get through this online thing, but I want to encourage you not to delay if you're considering Katherine Johnson STEM Academy for the fall. And then the very last slide before we show you our contact information is this. This is our estimated enrollment. One of the things that's unique about us is that we are a small school. Like you can see from this graph, right underneath our logo is our approximate size, about 180 students. Again, that's 2 sections for each grade level. We're growing, but we're not going to grow a ton more. And the reason we do it that way is because we think that best serves our instructional model. Again, our main focus is STEM-based, problem-based, hands-on learning instruction, and we think a small school really helps kids do that. So we're keeping the school small on purpose. And many families actually want a very small school for their kids, which is wonderful. There are other middle schools that are much larger, and there are some families who really want a large middle school experience for their kid, and that is totally awesome. And there are some really great large middle schools. If you want a large middle school, don't send your kid to Katherine Johnson STEM Academy because we're not large. But again, if a small school size is important to you, that would be something to know as you consider applying. That is it in terms of information that we wanted to provide on this virtual tour. Our website is right there, kjstemacademy.org. We've established a temporary phone number that we're using during this online school time. Our regular phone number will just go straight to voicemail because no one's there, but we've established this temporary phone number, 818-732-9249. It rings our school office, our office manager who monitors that during normal school hours. So feel free, go ahead and call. My email is right here on the slideshow, kmh8583@lusd.net. So feel free to just, to reach out to me with a specific question if you saw something that you wanted to go deeper on. And also, Becky's email is on here as well, friends.kjsa@gmail.com. And again, we're on social media as well, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. If you go on YouTube, you'll see some of our morning announcements that we've been doing during this online time. If you go on our other social media channels, you'll see us shouting out some of our teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week.